My friends are always asking me about e-bikes and the different rules and regulations, and even how come e-bikes aren't allowed in certain areas. So today I thought I'd talk about some of the so-called rules put in place to govern e-biking. And really, sometimes it just amazes me how our legislators, and I'll use the term they, can make up new rules and laws that regulate something they have absolutely no clue about. Or they've never really realistically researched the very thing these laws are going to try to regulate. On top of that, the laws that they're putting in place aren't based on any facts, but instead rumors, hearsay, and ignorance. Now, I've seen this type of thing in the past. I was around in the late 70s and early 80s when mountain biking first started to get popular. And back then, pretty much the same thing happened with regard to the rules for mountain biking. The sport was so new, they just made knee-jerk reaction rules based on, again, rumor, hearsay, and ignorance. Same thing they're doing today. Back then, they didn't want to research and learn about the sport before they regulated it. And as time went on, and as the sport grew, a lot of action groups got involved to get some common sense rules to replace the stupid rules. E-biking has much of the same problems as mountain biking did when it first started. Same as back then, mountain bikes were blamed for all the trail problems. And now, e-bikers are the target. With the growth of e-biking, the trails have become more and more congested because the e-bike has opened it up to more and more people, which means there's more confrontations between all the users, the hikers, equestrians, mountain bikers, and e-bikers. With the lack of lawmaker knowledge, it's easy for them to simply blame the e-bikes for all the issues and then ban them from all the trails. Just like they did when mountain bikes first started to hit the trails. Mountain bikes were banned from many state and national parks. Now, for the e-bikes, they say things like, those e-bikers ride reckless and they speed around and run people off the trails. When in reality, that's been happening more with the regular mountain bikers and the equestrians all the time. And with the lack of knowledge about e-bikes, it makes it easier to make up some of the dumbest reasons to ban e-bikes, like e-bikes are so quiet that wildlife won't hear the e-bike until it's too late. Now, as we know, that's just a crock. And another reason that a ranger actually said to me was that e-bikes will suddenly burst into flames and cause a forest fire. And when the ranger said this, I actually laughed out loud. When I got done laughing at him, I pointed out that it was over 100 degrees and super windy. And the campers in the campground were allowed to have campfires. All the while, California was being ravaged by forest fires, many of which were started by campfires. Then the ranger, with a smirk on his face, pointed to a sign and said, "We have that taken care of." The sign said, "High fire danger. Be careful with your campfires." Yeah, like that's going to do a lot of good. Then I pointed out some of the campers that had huge bonfires with embers blowing all through the wind. As I said, some of this is pretty stupid reasoning based on ignorance. And those are only a few of the clueless reasons that I've heard against e-bikes. It took a long time, but mountain bikes are pretty much accepted on the trails in all the parks. As for e-bikes being accepted, I think it'll take the same strategy that got the regular mountain bikes accepted. More and more people are taking their e-bikes to the trails, which in turn is helping grow awareness of the realities of e-bikes. In fact, out here in California, I've seen some changes and improvements with e-bike access to trails. In our local mountains here, the Laguna Mountains, The Park Service is starting to recognize the issue is a congestion issue, not simply an e-bike issue. The Park Service has started to limit the types of users on the trails. For instance, some trails only allow hikers, bikers, and e-bikers included, but equestrians are not allowed. And then there are some trails that allow hikers and equestrians, but no bikers. The Laguna Mountains have thousands of miles of trails, so no one type of user is shorted. Now, in my opinion, this isn't the final solution, but it's one logical step in the right direction. Now, I still get a lot of friends asking me, what can they do to help get the word out about e-bikes? And I say, as e-bikers, we need to do what the mountain bikers of the 80s did when they were being banned from all the trails. First, when you're on the trails that you're allowed to ride on, follow the rules. Regardless if you agree with the rules or not, they're still the rules. And next, be courteous on the trail. Give the right of way even if you're the one that should have the right of way. It only takes one rude e-bike rider to get all the e-bike riders labeled as reckless and inconsiderate trail users. So don't be a trail rage rider. And another thing you can do is join an e-bike club and, make your voice heard. Many clubs have put together petitions from all the club members and sent them off to the appropriate agency or legislators. Now, I'm confident over time the rules for e-bikes on the trails will change and e-bikes will become, just as accepted as all the other trail users. I do think e-biking has a huge advantage over what the regular mountain bikers had to contend with back in the day. Back then, there wasn't the technology that we have today for helping to get the word out. Plus, and this is just my own opinion, back then, the mountain biking crowd was kind of looked at as a rebellious crowd, whereas from what I can see these days, the e-bike crowd is much more of a mainstream group, even if we did have a bit of a rebellious streak back then in the day. So I guess really the best thing we can all do to help the e-bike movement is to become good e-bike ambassadors and spread the word about how great e-bikes are. Another way to be a great ambassador for e-biking is to just, wave and say hi to everybody and be courteous on the trail. Also, one of the best things you can do to help the e-bike movement is to assist other cyclists who may have broken down on the trail. And, to be able to do that, it would be a great help to have, a toolkit with you, know how to use them, so you can help the stranded cyclists or cyclists get back on the trail. I have a video here. You can, take a look at it. And, it shows you what I carry on my e-bike for my trail toolkit to, be ready to help out. So I hope I see you on the trail being a great e-bike rider ambassador.